Most people assume intelligence is obvious. They imagine fast talkers, strong opinions, quick answers, impressive vocabulary, or a certain kind of visible confidence. They imagine intelligence as something that announces itself. But in daily life, some of the most intelligent people do the opposite. They reduce noise. They pause before reacting. They make fewer unnecessary decisions. They protect their attention the way other people protect their time. And that difference matters because intelligence in real life is not just about what you know. It is about how you manage energy, how you relate to complexity, and how often your environment supports clear thinking instead of slowly draining it. This is where Japanese-inspired habit philosophy can be useful not as a stereotype and not as some mystical secret, but as a practical way of understanding quiet intelligence, especially through the lens of small systems, small forms of order, small acts of restraint, small routines that make thought more precise. Not dramatic self-improvement, not performance, not trying to look wise, just habits that reduce friction between a clear mind and a noisy world. So in this video, we're looking at 5 Japanese habits linked to quiet intelligence. Not because intelligence belongs to one culture, but because some Japanese-inspired habits reveal something important. Deep thinking often depends less on intensity and more on design. The first habit is creating space before input. Most people begin the day by consuming. They check messages, news updates, short videos, unfinished conversations, small emergencies. Before they have formed a thought of their own, other people's priorities have already entered the room. This seems normal now, but psychologically it is expensive. Attention is not just something you use, it is something that gets shaped. The first inputs of the day often influence the direction of thinking that follows. If the morning begins with noise, the brain starts in reaction mode. If the morning begins with stillness, the mind has a better chance to become deliberate. Quietly intelligent people often protect that opening, not because they are trying to seem disciplined, because they understand something simple. A mind that is constantly interrupted rarely goes deep. It only goes wide, and wide is not the same as clear. A Japanese-inspired approach here is not a grand ritual. It is a calm beginning. Open the window, make tea, sit for 5 minutes, write one line. Look at the day before the day starts looking at you. This matters because of dopamine and salience. The brain is always deciding what deserves attention. Fast digital input trains it to keep noticing novelty. But novelty is not wisdom. It is just movement. When the mind gets trained to chase whatever flashes first, thoughtful reasoning becomes harder to sustain. So try something smaller tomorrow. For the first 10 minutes after waking, consume nothing. No phone, no news, no messages. Pair 2 simple actions instead: water and light, tea and a notebook, standing up and opening the curtains. That small buffer is not empty time. It is mental ownership. The second habit is reducing unnecessary expression. A lot of modern life rewards immediate response. Comment quickly. React instantly. Share every opinion while it is still warm. But one trait often linked to deeper intelligence is not faster expression. It is better filtration. Quietly intelligent people do not feel compelled to externalize every thought. They let ideas sit. They observe longer. They speak when the thought has shape. This is not passivity, it is compression. In behavioral terms, this reduces impulsivity. It lowers cognitive spillover, and it protects the mind from turning every passing impression into a public commitment. Once everything is said immediately, very little has time to mature. That is why silence can be useful not as withdrawal, but as processing space. In practical terms, this can look very simple. Pause before replying. Write a note before speaking in a meeting. Let one emotional message wait 10 minutes. Ask one more question before making your point. Replace the need to appear sharp with the desire to become precise. That shift changes the quality of thought. Because intelligence is not proven by how quickly you fill silence. Sometimes it is revealed by how carefully you use it. The third habit is keeping the environment cognitively light. This is one of the least glamorous parts of intelligence, but one of the most important. Many people imagine smart thinking as purely internal, but the environment shapes thought constantly. A cluttered space asks for background decisions. A noisy surface pulls attention in multiple directions. Too many visible objects create low-grade mental switching even when you think you are ignoring them. The brain pays for more than it notices. That is why organized, intentional spaces matter. Not because cleanliness is moral, because disorder creates friction, and friction weakens depth. A Japanese-inspired design principle often emphasizes placement simplicity and room to breathe. One object where it needs to be, one clear surface, one task visible. This is not aesthetic minimalism for its own sake. It is cognitive mercy. When the room is calmer, working memory does less unnecessary labor. And that matters because intelligent thinking is often less about adding more and more stimulation and more about removing what competes with it. Decision fatigue is not dramatic. It accumulates quietly. What should I do first? Where's that notebook? Why is this desk full? Why am I opening 5 tabs before starting one thing? A mentally lighter environment reduces those small leaks. So, make one surface clearer. Put the tool you need in sight. Hide what pulls you away. Let the room support the thought. The fourth habit is returning to basics instead of chasing novelty. A lot of people mistake intelligence for constant complexity. They assume smarter people need more stimulation, more advanced systems, more information, more optimization. But often, the opposite is true. Quiet intelligence tends to trust fundamentals. The same simple breakfast, the same notebook, the same reading hour, the same walking route, the same small questions revisited with more depth. This is not lack of imagination. It is respect for compounding. Psychologically, novelty creates excitement. It also creates instability. Every new tool, new system, or new routine comes with setup costs. More decisions, more comparison, more potential distraction. And if someone is always redesigning their life, they spend less time actually living it. Quietly intelligent people often resist that trap. They do not ask, what is the most impressive system? They ask, what continues to work? That question is stronger. It lowers ego involvement. It protects consistency. And it keeps attention on substance rather than reinvention. In Kaizen terms, small improvements matter more than dramatic resets. You do not need to become a different person every Monday. You need a pattern good enough to survive Thursday. So instead of constantly upgrading your habits, choose one basic habit and deepen it. Read 10 pages every morning. Walk after lunch. Review 1 page of notes at night. Keep the habit stable long enough for intelligence to become visible inside repetition, not just inside inspiration. The fifth habit is ending the day with mental closure. This is where quiet intelligence often separates itself from ordinary busyness. Many people end the day in cognitive sprawl, tabs open, messages half read, desk unfinished, tomorrow undefined. Then they try to rest while the brain is still holding loose threads. That does not feel like intelligence. It feels like static. A calmer approach is to close the loops you can. Not all of them. Enough of them. Write tomorrow's first task. Put one object back. Clear one surface. Close one tab group. Turn the phone away. Let the day have an ending. This helps because the brain rests better when it is not trying to remember everything. Working memory is limited. When small unfinished items stay active, they continue to pull background attention. You may call it stress. Sometimes it is simply too many open loops. Closing rituals reduce that load. And once the mind trusts that it can stop without losing everything, clarity improves the next day. This is where circadian rhythm and cognition quietly meet. Better evenings support better mornings. Better mornings support deeper thought. Intelligence is not only about what happens when you sit down to think. It is also about the conditions that make good thinking available. That is the deeper pattern in all 5 habits. Quiet intelligence does not usually look dramatic while it is happening. It looks like a protected morning, a measured response, a clearer desk, a repeated basic, a closed day. Nothing flashy. But repeated enough, these habits change the texture of thinking. They reduce interference. They protect energy. They allow attention to stay with what matters long enough for understanding to deepen. And that is why small actions matter so much. Not because they look impressive, because they keep the mind usable. So, if you want to think more clearly, resist the urge to start with something grand. Start with something quieter. Leave 10 minutes unclaimed in the morning. Pause before speaking. Clear one surface. Repeat one useful basic. End the day on purpose. That is often how intelligence becomes visible in real life. Not as performance, not as speed, not as constant output, but as steadiness, as selectivity, as the ability to keep a clear mind in a world that profits from confusion. And when a habit protects clarity, it rarely stays small for long.